Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly interview show where I bring somebody on and we get a little bit more of their perspective on movies. And here we have Aaron back again for round two, fellow
Cool.
SiftPop writer and also editor.
Cool,
So
cool.
had both you and Robert on within like 3 weeks, or I think Robert's popped up last week. So back to back. There you go. So
Woohoo!
all the SiftPop representation. Have Frank on next week. So
Oh, Frank's a fun time.
that's going to be an interesting one. That's his
Yeah, you
first
might need
time
to
on.
you might need to edit a little bit.
You know what? Just click on this is not for kids. This is not for kids, people. Do not watch this video.
No, he's much more good than he gives himself credit for.
And that's fine. We're all having
Yeah.
fun here. Now, always like to give everybody a chance to shamelessly plug whatever they would like to shamelessly plug. So go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I host a weekly podcast with all the writers at SiftPop. Kind of coming on every now and then. Shane's been on, I think, like 4 or 5 times. Coming on in November again, I think, with the Bond films. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I'm so excited because 8-year-old Shane grew up watching James Bond films, and I have my Blu-ray set like right up
Yep.
there. I had all of them on VHS as a kid and watched them way too many times.
See, I grew up on just the Pierce Bronson ones. So I grew up on the worst of the worst, and I still love the franchise.
You know what's terrible though? Pierce Brosnan was a great James Bond, and they saddled him with crap.
Yep. They
Like
gave him the worst scripts.
like besides GoldenEye, which I
Mhm.
love, they just progressively fell off a cliff. Like,
Yep.
what's going on here?
Yeah, I remember, I think World Is Not Enough was my favorite growing up, but like, I'm sure I'm going to hate it watching it again.
I've rewatched all of them as an adult and relatively recently.
Hmm.
And World of Not Enough has some really good elements in it.
Hmm.
Like it has some of the most interesting ideas of any James Bond movie. It's just a matter of did they actually do them well is another question. So
Right.
but
Right.
so I'm excited to
So,
come on, and also I listen every week. It's an awesome podcast and it's a lot of fun. So all of you should go listen to it. So
yeah, Sif Pop Writers Room, available wherever you do podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, I think Stitcher. I don't really know for sure.
I
Just search Sif Pop Writers Room.
yeah, I had been using Apple and Amazon Music for all my podcasts, and then realized like it's not great for podcasts,
Mm.
and also it doesn't keep where you are very well, which is
Hmm.
really annoying when you're trying to listen to a podcast and come back to it. So I've officially switched to Spotify. Much
I I just love how everything's in Spotify. Like if I want to listen to music, cool, and then if I want to go back to podcasts on a whim, we're good. We can do that.
I'm a convert. It is
Yeah.
definitely much better than Amazon Music. Sorry, Amazon.
I don't like their most recent update on how they organize your library, but it's a learning curve.
Mhm. And I'm sorry, Amazon, our sweet overlords.
Yeah.
Speaking,
Is Jeffrey Bezos back yet? Do we need to?
he's actually going to set up like a bond layer in
Oh
space
yeah. Yeah,
and
for sure.
straight out of Moonraker. But
You know,
not Bond,
we
not
keep
Bond
on
movie we'll be talking about.
we keep on watching like Bond movies and things like Kingsman, and we're like, how do people not realize that this guy's the bad guy? Yet here's Jeffrey Bezos.
I'll keep giving them our money.
Yep.
That's for sure. At least for the Criterion sale, I gave all that money to Barnes and Noble instead.
Yeah.
They're not taking over the world.
I think I only bought no, they're not. Maybe in the 90s they could have. Yeah, I think I got one from Amazon, but the rest I just got through Barnes and Noble. And it was because I placed an order and I thought I had one in there, and then it wasn't in there and it wasn't in stock at my local one. So I was like, all right, I guess we'll do Amazon.
I had the complete opposite. Apparently, I put Stagecoach in twice,
Mm.
and so now I have 2 copies of Stagecoach, and I'm like trying to give one away. I'm like, do you like westerns, like 30s westerns? Do you want some John Wayne? It's
Oh,
a
you can't pass it off here because the only
I
westerns I
I'm
like are
fully
2010s.
aware.
Yeah.
So, but to get things starting things off pretty recently. So
Hmm.
I feel like this is such an interesting question with so many that got backed up over the past year and a half. But Aaron, first off though, what's a previously released film that you have never seen that you're most excited to catch up on?
Yeah, I am really in a mood for some Chaplin stuff right now. I don't
Okay.
think I've ever seen a Charlie Chaplin movie. And I own several of them, some of them because of the Barnes& Noble Criterion sale.
Yeah. They're nice.
Um, yeah, and like, look, I've always known that he's got some really excellently made films. I just didn't know that like I wanted to see them.
Mhm.
I'm going to mention a film that I'm going to mention several other times, but after seeing for the first time Cinema Paradiso recently, there's such a love for that era of film that it intoxicates you. And I'm like, I want that.
Mhm.
And so like immediately when Cinema Paradiso ended, I mean, I owned it on digital, so I found myself a 4K copy of Cinema Paradiso, which by the way is just crisp and perfect. Um, Highly recommend that 4K viewing. But I also went and picked up a like a Chaplin short collection and a Buster Keaton short collection.
Oh, nice.
His Keaton's longer films are a little harder to like find.
I've
Um,
only seen The General. That's the
See,
only
and I
one I've
and I
seen.
really want to, but like you have to buy them in like 2 packs on Blu-ray, and they're like $30 a piece, and it's like if it's a Criterion release and you're getting all the extra special features and all the restoration, like that's justifiable, but not the standard Blu-ray.
Yeah, like
Um,
you might even get a surprise because like I bought two of those Criterion Blu-rays during the
mhm.
sale, and they both had extra movies in them.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, more movies.
Yeah, so like I'm excited to dig into those Chaplin shorts, but like I picked up The Kid like the first time they ever did the 50% off sale, and I haven't seen it yet.
Mhm.
And this time I picked up Modern Times and Circus and the Gold Rush, essentially any of the Chaplins that they had in stock. And I really want to dig into that era more, which is weird because that's probably the first time in my life I'd ever say that.
Well, and it's interesting too because like I've seen City Lights, I've seen,
Oh, they didn't have City Lights in stock. That was the one I didn't get.
and that's a nice Criterion. I have it
Hmm.
somewhere over here. And I have Gold Rush,
Yeah,
and I have never watched Modern Times, but I'm very excited to watch Modern Times, and I'm a huge fan of The Great Dictator. Obviously, one of his later films that actually has talking in it, and I saw that in film club when I was in college, and I'm like, this was great. I want to see more of this. So sometimes you just
there's
get
a
that bug.
there's a lot of them that are available on HBO Max. It looks like City Lights is, so that's nice.
Yeah.
Gold Rush is, the Kid is, so like you don't have to spend the $28 per Blu-ray.
Mhm. Yeah, if you need any other reason to shamelessly plug HBO Max, they have a lot of great classic films on there, along with
Yeah,
all the ridiculous amount of content that they have on that streaming service.
that is true.
But to take things a little bit recent, so with all the delayed films and all these anticipated films, what's the one that you're most excited about, Aaron, that hasn't been released yet?
Man, this is crazy because I think only one of these, actually, hold on, like both of these, I have two that I'm going to mention.
Mhm.
Both of these I would have been really excited for a year ago, but they probably wouldn't have been in my top 10. But like, it just almost feels like the farther and farther we get away from these movies, almost like the less excited I get. Like, I would have maybe said No Time to Die a year ago, but like that was before we saw a trailer and I was just all hyped for more 007 and like the Ghostbusters Afterlife, but then like that trailer came out and like it was awesome, but now it's been a year since we've seen anything new.
Yeah.
Like it's just a weird time to ask this question, which is great. My two answers are the Suicide Squad.
Yep.
um I mean it's coming out just around the corner and like that. I mean I was gripped by the casting and James Gunn um being chosen to write and direct it. It's awesome choices, but the um that first trailer and even that second trailer, like they've just killed me. They've been perfect. Like that moment when they're walking around on the beach and talking about what John Cena's Peacemaker would and would not eat in order to ensure peace.
Honestly, just the Peacemaker quotes in those trailers make me laugh so much. And like the most recent one where he's like, "So starfish, euphemism for butthole. Any connection?" And he's just doing it so straight and serious. And you're just like, and look on Viola Davis's face and Idris Elba's reaction of just like swinging back and like staring at him. So funny.
Well, and not only that, but like there's other moments too. Like Harley Quinn looks hilarious. Like when they're
Yep.
talking to the Peter Capaldi character.
Yeah, Brainiac.
Yeah, and they're doing all the like
If you do this, you die.
yeah, if you do this, you die. If you do that, you die. And they're all serious. Like, if we find out you have custom license plates, you die. Like, and here's the thing that most excites me about this movie. I'm fairly certain those are all going to be alt jokes. Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they just probably had 7 or 8 takes and they gave the alt takes for the trailer. Like, I don't think that's going to be the line in the movie. And I'm so excited for that.
What makes me so excited about this film is literally Warner Brothers is like, James Gunn, you
Mm-hmm.
could do whatever you want, any movie, but please do it at Warner Brothers. And he's like, I want to do a Suicide Squad movie. And who do you want to have a ragtag group of the strangest, most random, like bad supervillains? As in, like, they're not good villains. They're not good at their jobs.
Right, right.
And having them all come together. And it seems so perfect. And I can't wait to hear more Sylvester Stallone talking out of a giant CGI shark man.
Yeah, so Suicide Squad is for sure one, but probably one I'm more excited about is Last Night in Soho. Something about Edgar Wright. Anything he does, this isn't the last time we're going to talk about Edgar Wright today. And he something about his films are just incredible. And not only that is this is something he's never done before, but it's a horror movie, and the trailer was incredible. So this is one of those movies that I just get more and more hype the farther along we get. But again, if this was supposed to be a last year movie and we got all the marketing for it, and then it got delayed a year because of COVID, like I don't know that I'd be as excited about it. But like I'm really excited. Like this is my number one most anticipated movie of 2020. 2021. We're in 2021 now.
Yep.
It's July. I should get that
What
down.
year is it? Robin Williams Jumanji meme. So, but I saw Old today, and the first trailer that came on was Last Night in Soho, and I'm just like, yes, because what two young actresses are not are more popular than Thomas and Mackenzie and Anya Taylor-Joy right now, and you throw them both in the same movie?
I mean, define young, but like Zendaya.
They should
Like she's not a teenager anymore, right? She
should have just thrown her in this movie too.
Yeah. And Thomas and Mackenzie coming out of nowhere and then doing Jojo Rabbit, and like she was in Old, and she's in Last Night in Soho, and she's like lined up for 3 or 4. Like she's already. I've only seen her in Jojo Rabbit, and she's already one of my favorite people.
Yeah, I'm gonna sound like an asshole here because I'm gonna be like, before I saw Jojo Rabbit, I saw a movie called Leave No Trace with her and Ben Foster in it, and she's fantastic. And that indie film, people were calling her the next Jennifer Lawrence because Jennifer Lawrence had Winter's Bone, which was a similar kind of tone and performance kind of thing. So like
Jojo Rabbit is her Hunger Games.
I guess more or less, yeah. And now she has Last Night in Soho, and like Anya Taylor-Joy just completely just erupted.
Yeah.
Queen's Gambit.
She came out of nowhere. Same with Thomas and Mackenzie.
Yeah, because I remember seeing her in The Witch, and boy, is that an interesting watch. It's so disturbing. Like A24 horror, if you aren't okay with being like deeply disturbed to the core, then you probably shouldn't watch those movies.
Yeah, I wanted to see The Witch when it came out, and then I just didn't, and I haven't, and I just don't know that I'm gonna.
It's a challenging watch because it's in like Old English.
Yeah,
it's disturbing.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm not really interested in it anymore.
It's Robert Eggers is a very, very interesting director between that
Yeah,
and The Lighthouse.
yeah.
So,
Well, and I
but
hate the lighthouse, so
I love The Lighthouse, but I know equally as many people that despise that movie, which makes it so interesting.
yep.
Look at you, A24.
Well, and
I've always
it's not a movie that I hated that I'm willing to give another shot. Like I walked out of Uncut Gems and I'm like, I hate that movie, but I'm willing to give it another shot. Not for the lighthouse. Nope.
give Adam Sandler another try. But I'm also very excited for both of those films. Last Night in Soho, it is so interesting seeing Edgar Wright making a straight horror movie
Mm-hmm.
instead of a satire of a horror movie that actually really works as a horror movie too, because he's
Mm-hmm.
just that good.
Yep.
So there you go. Now, Aaron, if you could pick any movie, what would you remake?
I have two answers. Do you want a really recent one or a really old one?
Let's do recent first and then jump back
Okay.
to the old one.
All right, this is going to be a perfect example of I read the book.
Okay.
Tom Clancy's Without Remorse. Look, I think I like this movie more than most people, but I don't like it. It's okay. It's fine. There's nothing special about it except for like one or two scenes and the director and
Yes.
Michael B. Jordan. Like,
I was
uh,
even disappointed by the script, which is from Taylor Sheridan, who I'm a huge fan of. But like,
so Taylor
yeah.
Sheridan should be perfect to adapt to this.
Hmm.
I think the problem was I heard he wasn't the lead on it. I think what happened was they tried to get this movie made back in the 90s with Keanu Reeves.
Yep.
And I think that they just took the same screenplay and had Taylor Sheridan doctor it up a little bit, but they didn't want to change it very much. And so he came in for rewrites on to modernize it up a little bit but it's like, no, that script should have been burned because it belongs in the early 90s.
It makes so much sense that you said that because
Right.
watching thinking about the plot, I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
this feels like there's certain movies where you're like, this movie doesn't work anymore.
Right.
Like, people making movies that feel like, and I saw some people make that complaint about Black Widow. They're like, this doesn't work after the fall of the Soviet Union, kind of
Mm.
thing, where it's just like something doesn't
Disagree,
work
but
about it.
okay.
And yeah, sometimes it's just like it doesn't work 30 years later. But
Right. And like there's so much good in here. I mean, we talked about Taylor Sheridan, Stefano Saloma directing that. I
yeah,
think was a brilliant choice, and I think he directed the hell out of that movie.
he sure did.
Michael B. Jordan was incredible, and there's even like one of my favorite scenes from this year when he sets the car on fire and then gets in it with the guy. Like, is still a great scene.
Yep.
So I really love this book. I'm a big Tom Clancy fan. I became a fan from the video games. And then I eventually read a couple of his books, and I think he's a great author. A little dry for most people, but like Without Remorse was an incredible book. Now, and I knew it was always going to be a problem because this isn't a book that you adapt to a movie. This is a book that you adapt for a miniseries or a TV series.
Amazon, get on it.
And like so Paramount made it,
Yeah.
but like Amazon's already got the Jack Ryan stuff.
Exactly.
Like, I wish we would have gotten that instead. It's a fine movie. There's nothing, it's not necessarily, nobody should hate it, but nobody should love it. Because it's got things that everybody should at least kind of like in it.
Yeah.
But nothing that people should be over the moon about.
Yeah.
But so I would remake this. I'd make it closer to the book, but I'd still recast Michael B. Jordan and Stefano Saloma. I'd have Taylor Sheridan be the lead. I'd turn it into a miniseries and sure, throw it on Amazon so we can have a Jack Ryan crossover at some point.
Yeah. So also to plug the writer's room, I really love the episode that you talked about all the Jack Ryan.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Because I grew up watching Clear and Present Danger and Patriot Games a lot because my mom loves her some Harrison Ford. And watching those a lot as a kid, like I saw that and knew Jack Ryan stuff a lot. And then I read the books when I got older and actually bought them and like went through them. It's like such great ideas, such great material that you could use. So I
Well,
agree.
and what's sad is I feel like this Amazon show is not adapting the books, but there's such good material right there for for Jack Ryan. Like there's Red Rabbit, and there's we haven't gotten oh um the Cardinal and the Kremlin yet.
Yep.
Like why not just adapt a season for the Cardinal and the Kremlin, and then This Without Remorse is nothing like the book. Like very little reminiscences about the book, but the book is so good. Anyway, so that's the first answer.
Yep.
The second answer is Rebel Without a Cause. It should be familiar when we talked about it on the Goats episode.
Yeah.
I think this movie has a lot of interesting things about it, but I definitely don't think it's aged well. And it's a movie that I think kind of takes place over the course of one night, and everything is really rushed. Especially with the relationship for the character that's trying to essentially be adopted by this teenage couple. I think there's some real promise for this. Will never be remade because nobody's ever going to remake the James Dean movies.
Yeah.
But I think this would be a really promising. There's so much promise in the story. I just didn't think the movie worked very well. And I think this would be a really interesting one to see. I'd love to see a gender swap, so make the main character a female. Give it like a punky attitude. Cast somebody like Zendaya to be your lead, since we've seen what she can do in Euphoria. I think this would be a really interesting remake, but like I want to make changes.
Yep. And that's generally a rule of thumb of mine. And it's interesting because you brought up two of the main reasons why I think things should be remade. Because one, if it's based off of something and you screw up the something, go back and use the something to actually make it. That's my biggest issue with I Am Legend.
Give me a good Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter movie.
Yes. But I'm a huge fan of the book I Am Legend. It's one of my favorite books. And all three adaptations of it have not hit the mark. And like they're good in their own way, but like I want like actual vampires here, not whatever zombie thingies that they made for the Will Smith one, which I'm not going to argue that Will Smith wasn't great in that movie, because obviously he was. Yeah. And then like the other thing, it's like sometimes take a movie that didn't fully work, rework it, and do something interesting and different with it. So
yeah,
there's some interesting points, and I 100% agree on the Without Remorse one, and I'm not surprised that you brought that one up.
Yeah, it's just kind of shocking because it came out like 2 months ago.
Now,
and I knew immediately. I was like, nope, scrap it, start over. Or with whenever they announced the Rainbow Six movie, when they announced Without Remorse, like, and who knows if that's happening anymore.
Yeah.
Like, get it right this time. And and my guess is there's no script that it's already, they're going to rework. My guess is they're going to have somebody start fresh.
Yeah. If we can reboot Spider-Man how many times in like how short of a period of time, we can do that. It'll be fine.
Right.
Now, Aaron, what's your fondest memory of going to the movies?
Absolutely 100% equivocally Endgame opening night. There's a couple things I could have thought about this, like the first Avengers opening night. It was my first midnight IMAX experience. I think it was my first IMAX experience. So like those were incredible, or like even like Pacific Rim in IMAX. Like that's one of my favorite movies. Like there's so many examples here, but I was so looking forward to Endgame that I didn't get tickets the second they came out. Because I wanted to go with a group, but I didn't want to buy too many tickets.
Yeah.
And the IMAX theater nearest me like sold out like immediately.
Who's surprised?
I know, right? But like I hadn't had trouble getting tickets there in the past for other movies, but the biggest movie of all time, So I wound up like getting tickets at, it's not an IMAX, but it's a large screen format at a Cinemark.
Oh yeah, XD.
Yeah,
Their thing.
It's something like that, and like it's fine. It's better than a normal screen, but it's not IMAX. And so I was like walking in, I'm like, man, like this isn't even IMAX. And not only that, but we got tickets in the very front row because that's all that was available. Now, it's a reclining seat auditorium, so they're not super close to the screen, and you just recline.
Like
But
a little bit better.
yeah, it was a little bit, or I think it was second row. But either way, it was like super in the front. Would never intentionally buy those tickets unless it's my only option other than, standard theater for a movie that I really want that big screen experience. And I was thrilled because the movie was still great, and sure, I was close and my neck hurt afterwards, but for most of that movie, legitimately felt like I was in a sports stadium, not in a movie theater. Especially that last hour is just nothing but cheers and chants and hoots and hollers, and like it's an experience I will never forget and we will never replicate.
Yeah, and like I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I'm looking up videos of the portal scene
Yep.
and people's reactions to like on your left, and it's just like, oh my god.
And the theater
And
erupts when Spider-Man comes on screen. Yeah.
and yeah, I will be shocked if even Marvel themselves can come up with an event film like that again, because honestly, I don't think anybody's going to. And I think especially after COVID, I
Yeah.
don't know if I don't know if the movie going experience is ever going to be the same.
No.
But like that is a once in a forever moment.
Well,
That
and it's weird because the Rise of Skywalker tried to do the exact same thing and it just didn't work. I went and saw the Rise of Skywalker and like in an IMAX theater on opening night, and there was plenty of tickets available, and also like like there was never a shout of joy. Like the opening crawl comes, and the first lines that come is like the dead speak or something like that, and my whole row just burst out laughing. Like, and
because
that and like it's a difference of quality of movie, but like for but like the thing about Avengers Endgame, specifically that final battle, is as soon as people start to quiet down, the movie does something new that people just get uproarious about again, because all of a sudden you've got this fight and then it gets dead quiet and Cap wields Mjolnir and everybody just screams, and then all of a sudden, as soon as they finally calm down from that, then all of a sudden you get the portal scene and people are screaming, and then Cap says Avengers assemble, and it just gets louder and louder to decibels that you've never heard before. And then as soon as it kind of starts to settle, then you see like, oh, this character's here, oh, and this character, and they just did something wicked, and Rescue's here, and wow, like it's just an experience that I will never forget.
it's yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the fact that it was like at a sporting event. Like you're sitting
Yeah.
there watching like a football game or something and people are just going nuts. Like somebody's running it in for a touchdown like 100 yards to win the game and you're just like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
Exactly like that.
two quick things about sitting in the front row because I've only ever sat in the front row twice.
Mm-hmm.
And one, I got caught up with a bunch of BS at the mall on my way to go see the 70 millimeter road show of the Hateful Eight.
Oh,
And I was in the front row, and that is not a movie on a
nope.
70 millimeter print that you want to be like a sprinkler.
Yeah. Yep.
Like just try to scan the screen. And it's funny bringing this up again. I would never have thought when I went to opening night of The Lighthouse, I would show up and the whole place would be sold out except for the front two seats. And I'm like, what?
Who's going to see this movie?
I'm like, apparently a lot of people in Hamilton, New Jersey showed up that Friday night and I had to sit front row in the center and just having those like foghorn.
I'd have been like, nah, I'm going another day.
And then just having Willem Dafoe's giant face
Yep.
screaming about seabirds and eating your beans, Tommy, and
Yep.
watching some people do some intimate things with themselves right up
Mm-hmm.
front. Such a weird movie.
Yeah.
Now, Aaron, what's a film that really exceeded your expectations?
Yeah, here's number two that we're going to talk about, Cinema Paradiso. Because there's certainly movies that I go into expecting not much, and I leave and I'm like, holy cow! But Cinema Paradiso had everything working against it for me. It's an older film. Now it's
Mhm.
80s. It feels a little older than that. Um,
It's definitely filmed
so
like it's older.
yes, it's intentionally filmed to be to reminisce a little bit. So it's early 80s. Not only that, but it's also foreign. It's Italian, and it's subtitled the whole way through. And like, look, I don't mind subtitles, but I'd rather subs over dubs. But like honestly, like if there was a American remake, I might have honestly gone for that first.
Mhm.
Like um, I just because there's something about wanting to experience a movie on every level, and I feel like when I watch subtitles I'm not able to experience it on a visual level, and I can't quite fully experience it on an audio level because it's not audio I understand. So everything was working, and like no actors that I recognized, no writer director anything like that I recognized. Nothing about this movie was really expecting me to be much more than like, oh, that was fine. And I came away in love with this movie and have next to nothing bad to say about it. It's my like 24th favorite film of all time. And so like to go into something with pretty dismal expectations and it to completely like conquer most movies I've ever seen and climb up my rankings immediately, um, that is the definition of really exceeds your expectations,
You're just like,
right?
oh, yep. I'm shooting for like a 75 on this exam, and you come out and like, I got 100, and just like comes out of
Exactly, right.
it. And the only
It,
so
it's like when you see a menu item and you're like, oh, that sounds good. I think I can roll with that today. And you take a bite and it's the best thing you've ever had in your life. Or it's like when you're like, I'm not sure if I want to get this salmon. I'm not sure if this is the place I want to get a salmon from. And you do. And it's the best salmon you've ever had in your entire life. And you're like, I can never not get the salmon from here again.
exactly.
It's
And
just like that.
going into this movie, the only element that I was aware of was that Ennio Morricone did the score, which
Mhm.
chef's kiss. Because like basically
Yep.
any score that he ever composed is just beautiful. And the score in that
You know,
film,
they're making a documentary about him.
oh, I'll be if that's a if you
Yeah.
want to ask, I'm opening night for Ennio Morricone documentary
The
to go check that out.
the uh the director of Cinema Paradiso is doing it.
Beautiful. That is
Yep.
absolutely wonderful. I will be seeing it.
Hmm.
But the ending of
Same.
Cinema Paradiso is one of the most cathartic like experiences I've ever had watching a movie. Like
Yeah.
watching another round this past year and watching the end of that film and just being like, oh my God, I'm feeling so many things right now. Watching the end of Cinema Paradiso and just being like, this is honestly one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And
Yeah.
it just works on so many different levels. And I'm not going to ruin it for all of you because you should all go watch
Nope.
it. So
Hmm.
now, Aaron, if you could take any written work and turn it into a film, what are you turning into a film?
Oh, we're digging back into the Clancy well. I'm making Rainbow Six. Uh, Rainbow Six is my favorite like fiction book of all time. Um, and it's such an incredible, rich story. I read it because I loved the video games, and I had no idea that the book was going to be this good. Have you read the book?
Yes.
Okay, like I could sit here and visualize exactly how this movie would play out. I mean, again, I think miniseries. I think you turn
Yeah,
John
because like
Clark into a miniseries.
books like that.
It's thick. It's a big boy. But like I think you turn this into a John Clark TV series, and you have your first season be without remorse, and then you if you want to have your filler season, that's fine, and you get Rainbow Six eventually, because like that amusement park scene and the Olympic scene and the opening scene with the like all these different like action set pieces. But what I was really surprised is these really rich characters and that are thought out and played out and like the thing about playing the Rainbow Six games, to me was oh, I'm playing some really generic white guy because they want me to like
Yeah.
respond. Like they want me to put me in his shoes, and I'm playing with people that don't necessarily have a lot of character development because Rainbow Six is video games that are not 60 hours long, don't have
Mhm.
the most character development. Um, and Rainbow Six has always been focused on how do we make this a realistic tactical situation that
Yeah.
feels something fresh and original and exciting. And so like going from Rainbow Six Vegas into this book was like, oh wow. Like so I'm digging back in that well and I'm making Rainbow Six, which every part of me is hoping that because Amazon straight up bought without remorse for like $400 million that they're gonna do the Rainbow Six movie that they set up.
Honest, like at this point, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if they didn't just do their own Jack Ryan Clark just universe there, because they're already 2 seasons into Jack Ryan. So
It's all going to depend on where the rights land
yep.
because I assume Paramount still owns the rights to the character. They just gave distribution rights of the movie to Amazon. So it's all going to depend on will Paramount produce it for Amazon or distribution rights again, or will they sell the rights of the character to Amazon? Everything is there set up for them to do it, and I'm going to be so upset if they don't do it.
Jeff Bezos, when you get back from space, write a check. Just
Make my Rainbow Six.
just pass that right on over. You have the money. We know you do.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, shifting gears a little bit to thinking about some of the things that make us excited about movies. So, what's your favorite movie trailer?
Yeah, dude, I was telling you before the show. I think I could give you a million guesses. You would never get it. This is my favorite movie trailer of all time to a kind of mediocre movie that everybody's forgotten about. We're going with Flight.
Interesting.
Do you remember this trailer at all?
Yes. I remember because I remember when this came out, and it's just like I I hate for some reason one of the things that stick out in my head is like drug dealing John Goodman
Mhm.
popping up in it.
Well, all right. So it had like an incredible soundtrack for the
Yeah.
trailer, and it demonstrated some really great acting moments by Denzel and John Goodman. And it shows them. This is the one where he flies the plane upside down.
Yep.
So it shows that, and you think this movie is going to be about here's the problem with its pretty mediocre movies because you think this movie is going to be about this guy who has to overcome this plane situation, kind of like I haven't seen it, but I assume Sully is like. Um, this guy has to overcome this plane situation, and that's going to be probably at least 50% of this movie.
Interesting you say that because Sully is also not exactly what you expect it to be. Because it
Yeah.
spends a lot of time on the investigation
Okay.
afterwards too.
So that's what I wanted from Flight.
Yep.
That's what Flight should have been. It should have been show me let's say 30% of this movie is figuring out how to land this plane and doing it, and the 60% is figuring out stuff afterwards. It's a movie about drug and alcohol abuse,
Yep.
and like it's a totally good movie for what it is. It's not the movie I wanted, and it's not the movie the trailer set out to be, and it's nowhere near the quality of what that trailer led me to believe it was. It's incredible, that trailer. I don't think I've seen the trailer in 10 years, and I don't think I've seen the movie since it came out, but I really liked it, and I'm due for a rewatch. So it's just like a fine movie for an excellent trailer.
That's a film that I caught with my Netflix DVD service like years after. And I'm just like, oh, this is because like I remember the trailer coming out and I'm just like similar like and obviously definitely gets a lot of parallels to Sully.
Yeah.
And Denzel, Tom Hanks, you're going in the right direction. Having some great people to lead it, but that's always interesting is when you get that trailer that gets you so excited and then you see the movie. I'm like, oh, that was okay.
Well, and look, probably going to have the same experience when I go see Old later tonight. Because that trailer's an all-timer for me.
I fall in the middle on the side of liking it. Like for the most part, I've seen a lot of people just polar opposites. Like they're in love with this movie or they think this is hot garbage. And I'm like, no, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle here. But that old trailer though, Shyamalan trailers like I'm pretty sure last Airbender trailer got everybody excited, and then they saw the movie, and then saw like Earthbenders floating pebbles, stuff like that. And it's not my Avatar, the Last Airbender.
Well, and it's like, speaking of Shyamalan, I mean, look with The Happening. The Happening was a great trailer for a terrible movie. With like, it introduced like, because I was talking about this on the podcast with Caleb last week, and about how I really hope that this movie does something. Now I've been told that they explain what's going on in Old, like they explain why it's happening. But it's like, I think the better movie is they don't explain it, because The Happening is a much better movie if they don't explain why people are just killing themselves, like out of nowhere. People would be theorizing and guessing, right? Air, right? It's like so stupid, and people love to crap on that movie now, and like rightfully so. But I think it's probably a pretty decent movie if they just say it's happening, deal with it.
It's too heavy-handed, and Mark Wahlberg's not a scientist.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, we're not going to kill you.
Not only is Mark Wahlberg not a scientist, but his character is not a scientist. He's like a high school biology teacher. Like,
yeah. Also, Mark Wahlberg's not a teacher either.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg's exclusively cops and military people.
What? No.
Oh my God. Oh man. But sometimes those trailers just ruin it for you, because you get to the movie and it's like, this is not what I thought this was going to be. Yep. Now, shifting gears to back into the movies. So a couple of questions about music. So what's your favorite use of music in favorite use of a song in a movie?
Yeah. I mean, this may be cheating because it's not necessarily the song choice. It's about how they use the song.
Okay.
You look, the best example of the use of music in film is Baby Driver.
100%.
Edgar Wright, it does something brilliant that I've never seen before, other than in brief glimpses in his earlier movies. There's something so perfect about it, and the soundtrack, but the way that it feels like the movie is a soundtrack visualized.
Yep.
As opposed to a movie with a soundtrack. So my example is going to be the Harlem Shuffle. And it's the way that it's staged, because we got Baby, and it's like the second scene of the movie.
Yeah.
Bell Bottoms would have been a great example too. So would have the Queen song.
Yes.
I can't think of it right now.
It's not Stone Cold Crazy.
Brighton Rock.
That's it.
But the Harlem Shuffle, it's the second scene, and we open with Baby going to get the heist crew coffee, and he's listening to the Harlem Shuffle, and like the lyrics will say like, you move it right here, and then there's an X with here written on it, and then like he'll there's a little trumpet part where we go ba-da 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 ba-da, and like he stops in front of the glass and plays this trumpet that's on the glass, and it's like everything about the way how creative that is. And he walks down the street, picks up the coffee, and walks back, and like the way you see little things change by the way that like people are reacting when he walks by them, to the way that you'll see like it's two people arguing and then it's just one person. It's maybe the most brilliant scene in film history.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how long it took him to rehearse.
It is. That film is one of the most unique examples of a musical ever.
Yeah.
Because you're not just going out there and singing songs. You are acting out to music the whole entire time. And it's not just him. The cars are acting along to the music too. And it's just so great. And yeah, you could use so many examples of Edgar Wright. Like Don't Stop Me Now.
Shaun of the Dead. Yeah.
Love it. The Alabama song Whiskey Bar in The World's End, where they're like, womp, 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 womp. Like act casual, and they're just walking through, and all of them are just like staring at them, and they're all just wasted, just trying to stand up straight, and they're walking to the beat of the song so perfectly.
Yeah,
Edgar Wright's a genius. Like,
he is. It's like it's maybe not the the first answer somebody might think of favorite song in a movie might be like, you take the Where Is My Mind at the end of Fight Club, or you take gosh, I'm trying to think of other like really iconic ones. Like, I don't know how many people would answer this, but like, it's brilliant.
Yep. And honestly, you could pick so many songs just from Baby Driver.
Yeah.
Like the whole entire thing. And like the one that I first think of is Bell Bottom. Him just like,
Sure.
oh, just like
Right.
sitting in the car and just doing his whole entire thing to it. It is so great.
Right. Harlem Shuffle is not the first song I think of when I think of Baby Driver, but that's the first scene I think about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I probably think of Bell Bottoms or the original recorded Chase Me for the soundtrack.
Now, shifting to more original music in a film. So thinking about if you're going to put on any score to listen to, what's that score that you're going to put on?
Yeah, this is a difficult. I have a Spotify playlist that's just like full of songs that I picked that I love from movies, and like it's anywhere from like the iconic, like Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Yep.
to even things like I think Alien Covenant has like one or two really amazing scored pieces. So like it's just a wide variety of, if I hear a song in a movie that I just really love and I keep thinking about, I'll add it to the list, which is incredible. But like, look, I promised the last time I'll mention Cinema Paradiso, but I can't stop thinking about the music in this film because Morricone is a genius and brilliant, and it's the perfect vibe for what that movie's going for. And when you're watching the movie, it feels repetitive because it's the same like structure over and over again. But like, there's always like slight differences, or there's slight changes, or it's used in such a perfect way that this is a much like this movie still would be incredible, but you hire anybody else to score this movie and it's nowhere near as good.
No.
And it stands alone on its own, and like the music alone is enough to make me almost just cry, like just by thinking of that final scene, like just listening to the soundtrack. So that's probably it, but I did look at my playlist to see which soundtrack I have the most tracks from.
Okay.
But if you wanted to say anything about Cinema Paradiso score, I'll let you do that first.
So I listened to the theme from Cinema Paradiso quite a bit. And honestly, a lot of Morricone music, a lot. Like, I listen to tracks from the Dollars trilogy all the time. And I think we might be on the different ends of this from what I remember from when you talked about the Untouchables on the podcast, because I love the soundtrack to the Untouchables. And especially the opening scene. I'm trying to remember. I felt like somebody was talking about that they weren't didn't feel like the music fit.
I think it's Robert.
It was Robert.
Hold on. I think Robert didn't remember it, and I said I think sometimes it doesn't fit.
Okay.
I think the music by itself is great.
The opening number to like the title track is amazing, and I'll just listen to that all the time because it just has such a feel to it. But yeah, it's the Cinema Paradiso theme is one of the most beautiful pieces of music I've ever heard from a movie. But
yeah, it's insane.
Talk about your playlist.
Yeah, so the one that I have the most tracks from, kind of shocking, but not at all. Oscar winning, The Shape of Water by Alexandre Desplat.
Desplat.
Yeah.
Basically, I have so much of his music too because yes, Shape of Water is a beautiful score, and him doing all that work with Wes Anderson, like obviously Wes Anderson should get a lot of credit for his movies, but putting Alexandre Desplat's music under it just brings it to life. Like Grand Budapest Hotel would not have that same feel without that score. And Shape of Water, though, is so beautiful. And Desplat's such a great composer. I remember seeing a movie, Operation Finale, with my mom. She loved the film. I thought it was a really solid historical thriller. But what do I remember most about that film was sitting during the opening credits and being like, this is a banger.
Yeah.
This sounds like Alexandre Desplat. And as the credits are going, I'm like, yep, there he is. And sometimes you just have those moments where they just elevate everything.
It's really incredible. And like the thing that impresses me about the Shape of Water soundtrack is I think you could listen to it in any mood. And like I feel like Cinema Paradiso is like there's two moods. There's heavy and sappy, and there's light and fluffy. But like the Shape of Water kind of is lots of different moods, and each song is by itself pretty unique. Like no one song is the same, and there is a through line, but that's why there's so many tracks there. Is because I could take a look at the Cinema Paradiso soundtrack, and I think I have 3 of the tracks on the playlist because it's so repetitive.
Yeah.
But Shape of Water is uniquely original in almost every piece of music. I think it's brilliant. It's by far his best work, which is saying something because we didn't even mention the Intimidation game or the Imitation
Yes.
game,
And
which has the Alan Turing's Legacy, which is maybe one of the best scored songs of all time.
he's so talented. He
Yeah.
is such a great composer. 2 things real quick. Back to Morricone. I remember
Mhm.
watching the Oscars for the 2015 Oscars when he finally won at like
Mhm.
90 something years old. That Hateful Eight soundtrack
Yeah,
is
man.
amazing.
Mhm.
The opening track, which is like 10 minutes of the wah, 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 like my roommates were so mad because Force Awakens didn't win. And I'm just like, no,
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 no.
let's not even have that argument. One thing I was really mad at that Oscars was that Fury Road didn't even get nominated for
Mm.
score, which that thing is insane. And I don't know it's because it's a bunch of old white guys are just like, what is this?
Well, but it got a Best Picture nom.
Well, I meant like for the music at least.
Yeah,
Because like
I
that
I would think if it would get a Best Picture nom, it should be worth at least in the conversation for.
it 100%
But
should.
look, you have John Williams doing a Star Wars movie. Like even if it's a bad movie or a bad score, it's still going to get nominated.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Morricone earned that. And then I listen to so many scores, even in like while I'm driving, that my fiance Jess will be like, she'll try to guess what it's from, and her go-to is always, "Is this Batman?" And it was funny because the other day the Danny Elfman 1989 Batman theme actually came on, and actually it was no, it wasn't. It was the Batman animated series theme came on, and I'm like,
Well, that's the same.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
basically the same thing. And she's like, "Is this from the Batman movie?" I'm like, "Close, technically,
yeah.
the same
No, for
thing."
the main title they use Elfman's score from that. They score their original stuff for the other stuff, but the original title is the same theme. Yeah,
Yeah, to be clear,
it's just a trimmed version.
yeah. Honestly, there's 4 tracks that I probably listen to most that are from scores. 2 of them are from Dead Man's Chest
Okay.
because Davy Jones's theme and the
Mm-hmm.
Kraken theme
Mm-hmm.
are like especially the Kraken one is the most bombastic thing I've ever heard, and I love every second of it. And then 100% Portals and The Forge from Endgame and Infinity War because I could see the whole scene along with it, and it just works so well, especially The Forge. Like I get goosebumps every time the it drops, and you know it's when the Bifrost shoots down in Wakanda. I'm just like, oh, Thor's coming, and it just works so well, so well.
I think probably if I had to pick 4, it would be Journey to the Line from the Thin Red Line,
Okay,
which I don't like that movie, but that score is just excellent, and it's essentially the same as Time because Hans Zimmer just recycles his stuff from
oh,
Inception.
you mean like when you're sitting and watching Gladiator and the invasion
And
of
Pirates
Carthage,
came up,
and the
yeah,
Pirates theme just comes on?
yep. So I'd say that Hymn to the Fallen from Saving Private Ryan would be there. Um, uh, it kind of doesn't really count, but On the Nature of Daylight, which is used in Arrival, but it's not. It wasn't filmed for, or it wasn't scored for.
That's okay, we'll count it.
And my favorite Star Wars scored song ever is the Hope Suite at the end of Rogue One. Jyn
Ah,
Erso and Hope Suite. But you throw in there like there's a song from Gifted called "When You Were Born," which is great. The Westworld theme.
Yes,
Uh,
Ramen Djawadi kills it. Like,
the First Man score is great.
yeah, there's just so much great music. What was the last one that you mentioned of your four?
Um, oh geez,
From
Hope
Rogue One.
Dinner Son Hope Suite. Yeah.
That was a Giacchino, right? Did
Mm-hmm.
that score? Married Life from Up.
Yep.
You want to go on a field trip? Feels trip. That'll just trigger you. But Aaron, my last question for you is,
Mm-hmm.
what's the one thing that you want movies to stop doing?
All right, I have two things that I'm more passionate about. One of them.
You can mention both of them. Robert went for two, three.
Yeah. All right. So the thing that I'm less peeved about is the "I bet you wonder how I got here" opening. And here's why I'm less peeved about it is because Robert and I recorded this morning, or this afternoon, for the writers' room, and we talked about Sunset Boulevard, which has that "I bet you wonder how I got here," but it's done well.
Well, and to
And
be perfectly honest, that was so early on that might
Mhm.
have been one of the first ones.
Right. So like there are definitely good examples of this. And when I brought it up, he also brought up Inception and The Prestige that aren't necessarily like "I bet you wondering how I got here," but we're gonna show you a glimpse of the ending at the beginning.
Just
Now
want you-
the worst is when they actually go, "I bet you're wondering how I got here."
yeah. It just makes me think of The Other Guys, where Steve Coogan's character is just like, I think the best way to tell the story is to start at the end and then go back into the beginning. And it's just like, no, dude, don't do that cliche.
You bring up The Other Guys and you have my heart.
Yep. That's one movie I could watch every day and laugh so much, brings so much joy. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love Sunset Boulevard, and that's like probably one of the most iconic. And like, dude's floating dead in a pool. Like,
Well, and it's relative it's opening shot of dead person in a pool doesn't sound subtle, but it kind of is because they don't linger on it. He's just like, all right, here's where I am. Let's see how I got there. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, and it feels very basic, but like, you're like, it wasn't like long and stretched out. And it's not like it's not like I think the worst example ever is the movie Limitless does this. And they take you to the climax of the movie and you're like, oh, great. Cause also like, this isn't the movie I'm interested in seeing because the movie I'm interested in seeing is smart guy does smart things, not smart guy does smart things and then gets addicted to drugs and then becomes a pill runner in bad shape for the mob. And now all of a sudden we're in a mob movie. No, I just want smart guy does smart things.
De
And how does
Niro's
he
in
adapt to that?
too, isn't he?
Yeah.
Of course, it was going to be a mob movie.
Right. So like, it's just one of those that like, I think it was the worst example of that because it takes you to the climax and it's like, well, now you've taken me here. It's like, I feel like I don't need the build up to here anymore. But to show, especially because Robert and I were talking about Sunset Boulevard, I guess spoilers for this part, but like, it's because you realize that the movie itself was never really about our main character.
No.
And so it doesn't matter that we see him dead in the beginning because what's more important is the repercussions of him being dead. So like it's almost kind of like I don't think this is a good but like The Great Gatsby when they show you Gatsby dead in the pool at the beginning like or in the end like no that was the ending. Now how do we get here? How do we get like is great but like there is no like aftermath that's really important. The climax is he got in a tangled web and was cheating on people and taking advantage of people, things like that, and so like that caused his demise. But like Sunset Boulevard is kind of like how so the equivalent would have been if we see Nick dead in the pool at the end of The Great Gatsby. The movie was never about Nick, it was about Gatsby. So Sunset Boulevard, like the movie is never about our main character. It's about the female lead.
I'm very excited to listen to the podcast next week.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
But what's the one that really, really grinds your gears?
Okay. When movies You can insert 2 or 3 different things here. Because I was thinking about like when rom-coms have that inevitable breakup 2/3 of the way through, but there's something that irks me more. When there's a movie about somebody who finds success, and that's the first 2/3 of the movie, and then all of a sudden, addicted to drugs, and like lowest of the low, and then they have to like either redeem themselves or kill themselves. That's it. That's the ending of either they redeem themselves, they get killed, or they kill themselves. That's it. That's your 3 options. And like I was thinking about this the other day because I watched Boogie Nights for the first time.
Okay.
Which is a really entertaining, really fun movie for about an hour and 45 minutes. And then when Wahlberg goes off the deep end because he's doing so much coke, which wasn't a thing at the start of the movie, they're just kind of like, oh yeah, he's addicted to coke now, and so he's aggressive. He's not sleeping and he's aggressive and he's territorial and all that. It's like, I don't care about this section of the movie. And then, and then there's the whole like redemption arc to get him back to where he was. It's like, I don't need that. I think the movie's better if he doesn't have that fall from grace, or if he has a fall from grace, but in a different way. Maybe just go off the territorial aspect. Cherry did the same thing, which Cherry's not a good movie anyway, but it was a worse movie because all of a sudden they're like, hey, drugs. And like, there are other methods to make people hit rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but like Boogie Nights feels like 2 different movies in one. Or like you even take an example like Goodfellas, right? Now, Goodfellas I'm willing to give slack on because it's based off a true story. But like the point, all of a sudden things are going well, and then Henry Hill starts doing coke, and then things go crap. Same with Wolf of Wall Street. Things going well, then they start doing Quaaludes. Like it's like, yeah.
And then it turns out in the end, it didn't matter because he could still keep doing whatever the hell he wants.
It never matters that a person was addicted to the drugs except for, to show how they get to rock bottom. But there's one of a million methods. So like drugs or alcohol, and like I'm not trying to downplay the seriousness of drugs or alcoholism and things like that. I just think movies use it almost as a crutch.
Yep. A lot of the time.
Because Goodfellas did it, and Goodfellas is great.
And honestly, that's one of the reasons why Goodfellas is not at the very top of my favorite Scorsese movies. Because, like, honestly, I don't like Henry Hill enough to care about him being whatever the hell happens to him at the end of the movie. And I'm just like, eh. And it's like, yeah, they use drugs is always that like, well, drugs or alcohol, let's do it.
Yep.
And you don't get things like The Jerk, where it's like, yeah, he winds up sleeping in the trash because he was a jerk.
Well, and like, let's take an example to this. Like, let's say for some reason somebody had the bright idea to remake Citizen Kane. Look, it's never going to happen, but let's say somebody has that idea. I'm pretty sure that the only reason Citizen Kane doesn't have drugs in it is because the MPAA wouldn't have allowed it. Right? Like, if somebody were to remake this today, he's going to be coked up by the time he dies.
Probably.
Like, it's not just going to be he's so inflated with his own ego. It's going to be he starts to get inflated with his own ego, and he starts to dabble in drugs, and eventually he's addicted to meth, or I don't know. I guess like movies never portray famous people addicted to meth. Whatever.
Honestly, I agree with if it was made today, that's how it would have went. Mm-hmm. I don't know, even if like. I feel like Orson Welles was specifically going for that vanity and ego, and that's what was his downfall kind of thing. But
yes, I think specifically he was going for that. But I'm saying if they're going to remake it, there's no way he's not doing cocaine. No way. There's no way he's not like Scarface.
I was going to be like, he's turned into Ellis from Die Hard. But like, obviously, Tony Montana, better example.
Yeah.
Literal mountain of cocaine on his desk. Just ask Michael Bolton from the song. My. But now, to wrap things up, Aaron, what's a question that you would like to ask the Wasteland Reviewer?
All right, here's the question that I thought short and hard about. All right, we talk a lot about what are our favorite movies ever. We talk a lot about like at least my personal all-time favorite, like best movies is based off of favorites. So I don't say best movies, I say favorite movies. I want to know what you think is the best made film ever.
You know what's interesting? Because I had this conversation recently. So I do my podcast, the Development Hell podcast, and every month an episode's called the Movie Club. And four of my friends and I pick a movie and we watch it. And we decided that we were each going to pick what movie we thought was the best movie of all time, and then randomly pick it between them. And like Vinny wound up picking The Graduate, and we randomly picked The Graduate. So like that's Vinny's favorite film, and he also thinks it's the best film. I think I was the only one who actually picked something that wasn't my favorite movie. Everybody else picked Pulp Fiction, and like my favorite film of all time is Lord of the Rings: Return of the King.
Right.
I didn't pick that. I picked The Godfather because, to be perfectly honest, like if I'm gonna pick any movie that I think like that is the best film put together that I have ever seen, it's probably The Godfather. And it does everything so well, and it's so iconic at this point. And also a movie I saw way too young because I was 10 years old. Watched that for the first time. And
here's why I love this question is because like there's so many different answers.
Yeah.
Like The Godfather is totally an acceptable answer. And like, yeah, like for sure. It's definitely in the conversation. And you could say Schindler's List could be, or Saving Private Ryan. Or you could,
which I don't know how many people our age say that, but it's in that conversation.
Right. You could say one of them, anything from the Criterion Collection. You could say a million different movies. And like, yeah, like, yeah, sure. So Godfather's a great choice.
And like the reason why I love Lord of the Rings so much is because I legitimately think that it does everything. And does everything at least well. Like I would say and like it even was shown at the Oscars. There's a reason none of the performances in Return of the King, I would probably argue Andy Serkis deserves some attention.
Yeah, for sure.
But they didn't win any of the acting awards.
Right.
Because it really is an ensemble.
Right.
And because like Mystic River, basically, I think won 3 out of the 4 of them. Because that movie's all about acting. Just as Sean Penn. And him like being held and like screaming up to the heavens. But like The Godfather has everything about it fires on all cylinders. Like Coppola directed it amazingly. The cinematography is amazing and revolutionary. The lighting they did in that film people didn't do that. Like they literally made it darker just to build that ambiance about it. The score, the acting, and also one of the most ridiculous casts ever. Like you legitimately have a no-name named Al Pacino long before the 80s destroyed his voice with all his alcohol. And he went full-blown Pacino in the early 90s because hoo-ha. But and like you could argue with Godfather Part 2. And I'm sure people have that argument until the end of time. Which one's better, Godfather or Godfather Part 2? But yeah, it's an interesting thought because I think it takes a lot to be able to take a step back and be like, here's the thing. Shrek is my number 5 favorite movie of all time. It flips between that and Shrek 2. Do I objectively think that Shrek 2 are one of the top 5 greatest movies of all time? I would never argue that with anybody. But like, I love them so much. And if I really think about my top 5, like 2001: A Space Odyssey, I think arguably would be up in that conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
I love Ben-Hur. I think a lot of people today would probably be lost on it. But like at the time, it was a marvel. And then Fury Road's my number 2 movie of all time. And I'll die on that hill. But like the Oscars didn't think so.
Man, so you're just spitting out all these like totally acceptable answers.
Well, the thing is, I watch so many movies.
I know.
It's just
No,
like,
well, but like it's like I've seen all these movies too, but it's like, yeah, like Mad Max Fury Road isn't one that I think anybody would have thought going into that movie. But like everything about it, like you could analyze that film with a microscope, and like it's the best version that any sort of film like this was ever going to be.
well, and that's what I'm afraid of with them making sequels because like I watched the Mad Max films for the first time in college, and obviously
Mhm.
they made a big impact on me. Literally,
Mhm.
my whole entire YouTube channel is themed after the Wasteland. So, but like the first Mad Max movie is really impressive for a movie made with $5
Yeah, yeah,
because like you can tell that it had no budget.
right.
Road Warrior was like the most amazing thing that George Miller could have made then. And then I saw Fury Road. I'm like, oh my God, this is what he would have done if he actually had money.
Yep.
And like,
This is Road Warrior with a budget.
yes, it legitimately is.
Yeah.
And they even gave him more money. Warner Brothers went out and were like, this is great, more money. So the accountant in me is like, who in the right mind would have given a 70-year-old Australian director who most recently made Happy Feet $150 million to make this bonkers movie out in Somalia for 7 months out in the desert because they couldn't even film it in Australia because of typhoons and stuff like that. And Blade Runner 2049, who in their right mind gave Denis Villeneuve $175 million to make that movie?
To make a movie to a sequel that, or to make a
Bomb.
sequel of a movie that didn't make any money in the box office. Well, here's where you're wrong with that, Denis Villeneuve.
Well, the thing is, 2049 didn't make money.
Right.
It lost Warner
Which is
Brothers
a
money.
shame.
Which that's the kind of thing where I'm just like, you all will shovel all the Transformers crap into your mouths, but then somebody makes something like this and you don't go see it. But that's my soapbox I'm going to get off of. But Aaron, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming back on for a second round here. And obviously, you're definitely invited for round 3 when I actually finish the questions.
Oh, can I answer my wild card?
Sure.
I think Knives Out is the best made movie ever.
Do you know what? And I know a lot of people bring in like recency biased and like with people bringing up movies like Parasite and stuff like that. But I like I don't think you could make a real argument against Knives Out being one of the most impeccably directed things I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like Rian Johnson's a genius.
Yep.
And Knives Out's a perfect. And speaking of cast,
Best ensemble cast of all time.
everyone
And everybody has a purpose, and every plot thread leads somewhere, and they're so meticulous about like my favorite detail is when they're talking about Marta coming back in
Mhm.
and they see the mud on the windowsill. If you go and slow-mo watch, Marta's foot clearly clears the windowsill, but when they show at the end Ransom coming in, his foot hits the windowsill.
Yeah.
It's like it's the little details that makes
things.
it such a perfect movie.
And it's so unexpected too, because it's not the kind of like you find out how he died,
Yep.
not even halfway into the movie.
Yep.
But that's not even the best part. And that's what's so great about it. 2019 was a year.
Yeah, man.
I can only hope that we have a year like that again. Because that between that and even things like Ford v Ferrari and Jojo Rabbit and Parasite and just like, and then 2020 happened. And we all took an arrow to the knee. And look where we are now. This is society.
Hey, don't you dish on the year that gave me Trial of Chicago 7 and Palm Springs.
If there is one movie from last year that I want everybody to watch,
Palm Springs.
is Palm Springs. Because like if you don't enjoy it, I question how much fun you want to have in your life. Because like I'm so like, I'm gonna sound silly saying this word, but I'm so smitten with Andy Samberg and Kristen Mieletti in that movie because the two of them together are so perfect. Yep, so many chef's kiss today. Great way to wrap up the show, though. But
yeah, thanks for having me on. I'll for sure come back for episode 3 whenever you're doing round 3.
absolutely. And honestly, if you ever again have last minute need of anybody on writer's room,
Oh, you know.
I'll be there. But Aaron, thank you so much. And thank all of you out there for tuning in and always supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.